Well, we've been here 19 years, starting this year, and when we first came down here, we didn't particularly know much about the Huon. In fact, I had never been down to the Huon. And I remember when we bought here, my mum said, "Giuliana, why?" You know, she's a 90-year-old little Italian lady in Italian. She said, "Why have you decided to live so far away?" And I said to her, "Don't talk to me about far away, because you left Italy and you travelled to the other end of the earth with your family, and you couldn't get any further away than you could coming to Hobart. So don't talk to me about me being 55 minutes away from you." And she said, "Oh, yes, you're right, daughter." Instantly, I hit the Huon Valley and I have this sense of calm, and without fail, when I go into my driveway, I either verbalise or I think it. I'm home. And the other thing about the Huon Valley is that the people are really nice, and so that makes it even more special. The people that I know are not in-your-face type people. They're not there all the time. They have their own space, they give you your own space, but you know without fail, if something goes wrong, it's just a phone call away and they're there. And it doesn't even get an maybe, it's just there. People are just like that. There's a sense of honesty about people around here. They'll tell you as it is, but 99% of the time I'm in my old farm clothes with holes in them, you know, and no makeup and hair sometimes not even done. And nobody would bat an eyelid. They'd come to the door and they accept you and you accept them the way they are. There's this group of old, well, men that I've met. I haven't met many of the really old women, but they've been here so long, and a lot of them never left Cygnet. They have this own little interesting way of speaking. There were two men that I know that would say, instead of saying it's far away, they say it's fur away, F-E-R. And it's really interesting because initially I thought it was just mispronunciation until I heard it from another old man, and I thought, no, it's not. No, it's the way they say it. And sadly, you know, they're passing away, and with them passes the history of the area. That's why we've taken such an interest in the history of this house, because the house is, we think 1850, 1860, we're not sure. What we did find out from one of these old fellows is that the original builders of the house was Bridget and John Lawler. They were actually convicts given a parcel of land here, and they built this home, and then they gave this home away and they moved to another home that they built down Golden Valley Road, which is the replica of this house. And there was a story, whether it's true or not, I don't know, that at some point the house was left vacant, and so they would, and always had cattle here, and the young guys would bring the cattle into the house for shelter. And because it was getting cold, they started to pull, rather than go and cut firewood, they started to pull away the timbers from the upstairs room, the dormer windows, the staircase, and they put it through the fire to keep themselves warm. Then when it became a home again, rather than putting back the staircase, they just sealed it all off. But the interesting thing was that about 2 years ago, maybe a year and a half ago, I had a family. They came here, the brothers of the family, some of the relatives were coming over for Christmas, and they had wanted to come to see the old house. And they lived in this house during the Second World War years, right up to the 67 bushfires. And they did not know that there was an upstairs room. And it had a beautiful garden. They showed me photographs, which was just amazing, and it just looked like a totally different area. But apparently everything in the 67 bushfires burnt down, including a house on the hill, and the tea towel sitting just outside this door had burnt, and everything burnt except this original house. The mum and the youngest child stood in the dam when the fires came through. The family weren't there, and she didn't know what to do, so she just took the child and stood in the dam, trying to protect herself from the fires that must have just raged, because all the houses around here and the houses up there were rebuilt apparently after the 67 bushfires. So this house is really a lucky home, because we just recently had those fires, the threat of fire again, And I had the same horrible sensation, you know, staying up for weeks on end and watching for embers and, you know, wetting down the house and doing all of that and thinking, it can't go. This house is not meant to go in a fire. And it didn't, thank goodness for that. I have this feeling, I think it started about 3-4 years ago, where I started to see people actually interested in the Huon Valley. And as I said before, I had never even been here, and yet I was born and bred in Hobart. And the whole concept of going down to the Huon, I knew about it, but never dreamt to take the drive. I think when people do that, they finally come here, they are just astounded by the overwhelming beauty. It is beautiful no matter what season it is in. But when you think of Cygnet, you think of that village mentality, you know, that closeness of people that come together and they believe in something together and they work together and they have all those lovely little festivals and just brilliant. Where else could you want to live? The Cygnet market is probably the best market anywhere. It is what a market should be. It's not all touristy. And when you go down to the Cygnet market, it is filled with people. There are people coming all the way from Hobart, taking the drive through the Huon, people from Hobart who don't usually like to travel even across the bridge. You know, they will go all the way down to the Huon to spend a day. They will go and eat in the little cafes that have great reputations, Australia-wide reputations. But Cygnet has so much happening that even I don't even realise. You know, the little artisan shops and beautiful pottery places and lovely eating places and places where writers go and meet up, and it's just so alive. I don't see that in a lot of other places. I don't feel that feel of this is coming alive and people are starting to have a sensation of we need to be there, we need to be part of this, and that's what's happening in the Huon. And I think also people that live here are extraordinarily proud of living here. So I think it's wonderful. I think it's wonderful. I just want more people to discover me up here on the hill with my little cooking classes. But yeah, it's just great. It's a great place to live. And I was in the middle of making bread actually, and the whole thing went silent, and my stove is quite noisy. And it went silent and it just gave up. But thankfully there's a fellow down in Cygnet, this really nice guy who's really mechanically minded, and he came up and he pulled it apart and it just needed a bit of lubrication, and now it doesn't even make any noise. It works beautifully. I think if I had 100 of these, I would have sold 100 over with the people that have come to my classes. It was without fail, people go, oh, I love that workbench. We're here at Wattle Grove, and Wattle Grove has this lovely little microclimate. So we hardly ever get frost on the farm. And we are a whole month behind what is happening at Cygnet, because Cygnet's at sea level and we're at 250 metres above sea level. So everything is a month behind. When the daffodils start to bloom down there, our daffodils will bloom a month later, and the wattles. We don't tend to see things until we start to look at them through other people's eyes. And it wasn't until I started to have woofers, which are willing workers on organic farms. They are young people, backpackers from all over the world that come and stay. And we've had over 400 more staying here. And I started to notice their first initial impact of looking out on a veranda and saying, wow. I had a young guy in my first year that we had woofers who was from Seoul, which has virtually half of all of Australia's population in the one city. And he would sit on the veranda at night time and get eaten by the mosquitoes. And I'd say, Someone, come inside. You know, and he said, no, Mama, he always called me Mama, no, Mama, I need to look at the sky. I don't see the stars at home. I have never seen the stars at home. All of a sudden, I started to look up. I started to look at what we had. I started to look at the outlook and see it through somebody else's eyes. And it's that's important. And I think people from the mainland, you know, they might come from places where it's really flat and boring, you know, and they come here and it's beautiful. Wherever you go, over every hill and every ridge, and it opens up to something different and something more beautiful. You go for a walk up into our forest, which is at 300 metres above sea level up there. And it looks like a totally different place. You can see the Harz Mountains, and you can see the Huon River, and you can see all the things that you can't see here. And every little bit is different. And it's not till you see that through somebody else points it out, and you start to stop being busy and look. And you go, oh, yeah,